All right, let's dive in. Get ready, because we're starting a deep dive into Western philosophy, and we're going all the way back to the beginning.
Wow, that's a long journey.
61 parts, to be exact. But trust me, it'll be an adventure. We're kicking things off with the Milesian School.
Ah, the Milesians.
Yeah, they're pretty important, wouldn't you say? To guide us, we've got a document focused entirely on them.
Sounds like a good starting point.
And of course, we can't forget Bertrand Russell's History of Western Philosophy.
Yeah.
It's a classic for a reason.
Right. Always a good reference.
So these Milesians, they were the very first group of Greek philosophers. Imagine ancient Greece, the city of Miletus.
I'm picturing it bustling, a hub for trade and cultural exchange.
Exactly. People from all across the Mediterranean were meeting there, exchanging stories and goods, debating ideas.
A real melting pot of cultures.
And our document suggests this vibrant atmosphere might be what led to the Milesians' philosophical inquiries.
That makes sense. Exposed to all sorts of different beliefs, it's only natural to start questioning things.
Like, what is the universe all about? What's it made of? Big questions. They dared to move away from the traditional explanations.
You know, the myths and stories about gods and goddesses.
Yeah. Instead, they searched for more reasoned, more scientific answers.
A pretty radical shift for the time.
For sure. So who were these pioneers?
Well, the document highlights three key figures: Thales, Anaximander, and Anaximenes.
Each with their own idea of the universe's fundamental stuff. Like, what's the basic building block of reality?
Right. For Thales, it was water.
Water. Seems a bit simple now.
But think about it. Water is essential for life. It can change forms. Ice, liquid, vapor.
I see. Without the tools and knowledge we have today, water as a fundamental element must have seemed pretty plausible.
Absolutely. It was a good starting point.
Then we have Anaximander. Now things get really interesting.
He proposed something called the Apeiron.
Apeiron. What's that?
According to the document, it's this undefined, limitless, primordial substance, not something tangible, more of an abstract concept.
So instead of something concrete like water, he imagined a kind of cosmic soup, a boundless source of everything.
Exactly. Everything originates from the Apeiron and eventually returns to it. A pretty radical idea.
For sure. And what did Bertrand Russell think about this?
Russell found it remarkable. These early philosophers, they may not have always had the right answers.
But they were asking the right questions.
Which is what really matters. They were laying the groundwork for scientific thought.
So we have Thales with water and Anaximander with the Apeiron. What about Anaximenes?
He believed that air was the fundamental element.
Air. Interesting.
He thought air could change forms through processes he called condensation and rarefaction, basically thickening and thinning.
So air condensing into water, then earth, then even stone. And on the flip side, rarefying to become fire.
That was his idea, trying to bridge the gap between Thales' water and the abstract Apeiron.
Sort of like a precursor to how we understand matter today. Different states of the same building blocks.
You could say that. And while these theories might seem simplistic to us now,
they were groundbreaking for their time.
Absolutely. Taking those first steps towards a scientific understanding of the world.
Okay, so each of these guys had their own theory. Did they ever, bounce ideas off each other?
Well, it's hard to say for sure. We only have fragments of their writings and later accounts.
Oh, right.
But they were definitely part of an intellectual community, engaging in debates, refining their ideas.
Challenging each other.
Exactly. Speaking of challenges, the document mentions something interesting about Anaximander's view of the Earth.
Oh, what's that?
He believed that the Earth was shaped like a disc.
A disc?
Really? Yeah, kind of like a cylinder floating in space.
Huh?
It was a common belief back then.
Fascinating. It's amazing how our understanding of the world has evolved.
Later Greek thinkers, like the Pythagoreans, would challenge that view and argue for a spherical Earth.
So even back then, there was this back and forth questioning and refining ideas.
Always pushing the boundaries of knowledge, and that's what makes studying philosophy so engaging.
It's like tracing the roots of our intellectual heritage, figuring out how we got to where we are today.
And maybe by understanding how these early thinkers approached these big questions,
we can get some insights into how to tackle the challenges we face in our own time.
You never know. The Milesians, they showed us the power of asking why.
And the importance of seeking rational explanations.
They were pioneers, challenging the status quo, setting the stage for centuries of philosophical and scientific inquiry.
And that brings us to the end of part 1 of our deep dive into the Milesian School. We've explored their groundbreaking ideas, their move away from mythology, their quest for a more reasoned understanding of the universe.
But our journey through ancient Greek philosophy is far from over.
It's just the beginning.
So we've seen how the Milesians searched for those fundamental elements of the universe. Pretty revolutionary stuff for their time.
Yeah, shaking things up, trying to figure out the building blocks of reality. So where do we go from there?
Well, their ideas had a big impact, influenced a lot of thinkers who came after.
Makes sense.
One of the most important figures who built on those Milesian foundations was Pythagoras.
Pythagoras, right. The Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Stuck with me since high school.
Yeah, I think we all remember that one. But he was way more than just a math whiz.
Oh, I bet.
Our document explains that he was a philosopher, a mystic, a really fascinating figure.
I'm intrigued.
He founded this community in southern Italy,
Okay.
and it was deeply shaped by that Milesian pursuit of knowledge, but with a twist.
A twist. Okay, now I'm really curious.
The Pythagoreans, while influenced by the Milesian scientific approach, took things in a more mystical direction. They believed that numbers weren't just symbols, but the actual building blocks of reality.
Hold on, you're saying they thought the whole universe was literally made of numbers, like a cosmic code.
Yeah, pretty mind-blowing, right?
Yeah.
Russell really digs into this idea. They believed that everything in the cosmos could be expressed through these numerical ratios and harmonies.
Numbers and harmonies. How so?
They were fascinated by the mathematical ratios behind musical intervals.
Oh, okay.
And this led them to believe that the universe itself was like this grand symphony orchestrated by numbers.
Okay, so math-loving mystics who thought the universe was one giant musical instrument.
You got it. And it's fascinating because this belief led them to some pretty insightful observations.
Like what?
Remember how Anaximander thought the Earth was a flat disk?
Yeah. Seemed logical based on what they could see back then.
Right. But the Pythagoreans, using both observation and their understanding of math, argued that the Earth had to be spherical.
Right, spherical. How did they figure that out so long ago?
They'd noticed things like ships disappearing hull first over the horizon, suggesting a curved surface.
Okay, that makes sense.
Plus, they looked at the moon and other celestial bodies, which appeared round.
Right.
But maybe even more importantly, they believed that the sphere was the most perfect shape, representing harmony and balance.
I see.
So the Earth, being part of this cosmic order, had to be spherical.
Wow. They used their love for math and their mystical beliefs to understand the Earth's shape centuries before anyone could prove it. That's amazing.
It really is, and that's where their genius lies. They didn't just accept what they saw, they looked for those underlying principles. They saw math as the language of the universe.
Like, forget magic spells, math is the real magic.
Exactly. And they weren't that far off. Math is still the basis of our scientific understanding.
So we've got the Milesians searching for a fundamental element, then the Pythagoreans embracing numbers and mysticism. It's like every generation builds on the one before, adding their own insights.
Exactly. And as we continue exploring Western philosophy, you'll see this pattern again and again. Each generation tackling the big questions, drawing inspiration, challenging, refining those old ideas.
It's like an ongoing conversation, a grand intellectual relay race.
That's a great way to put it. That's what makes studying philosophy so rewarding. It's not just about what people thought, but how they thought.
And how it all connects.
Exactly. Connecting with that long chain of thinkers all trying to make sense of the universe, just like us.
All right, so from the bustling port of Miletus to the mystical community of Pythagoras, we've seen these early thinkers wrestling with the nature of reality, the shape of the earth, the role of math. It's pretty mind-blowing.
It is. And in part 3, we're turning our attention to a figure who changed the landscape of philosophy forever, Socrates.
Socrates. Get ready, things are about to get interesting. It's amazing how those early Greek thinkers were already tackling such huge questions about the universe.
Oh yeah, using observation, logic, even mysticism to try to figure things out.
It really lays the foundation for everything that comes after in philosophy.
For sure. And speaking of incredible thinkers, that brings us to Socrates.
Socrates, I feel like his name is synonymous with philosophy.
And for good reason.
I mean, I know he was this wise philosopher, but our document doesn't go into too much detail. What made him so important?
Well, he was a real revolutionary. He kind of shifted the focus of philosophical inquiry.
How so?
The Milesians and Pythagoreans were all about those mysteries of the cosmos, right?
Right, trying to figure out what the universe is made of.
But Socrates turned his attention inwards, toward human nature, the pursuit of virtue.
So instead of what is the universe made of, he was asking, What does it mean to live a good life?
Exactly. Questions of ethics, morality, justice, knowledge. And his method was just as revolutionary.
Oh yeah, the Socratic method. I've heard of it, but could use a refresher. What's so special about it?
Instead of lecturing and proclaiming his wisdom, he would engage in these dialogues, asking questions.
So less of a lecturer, more of a philosophical sparring partner.
That's a good way to put it. He used carefully crafted questions to get people to examine their own beliefs.
Wow, I bet that could be pretty challenging.
Oh, yeah. It was this relentless questioning, probing, challenging assumptions.
I can imagine it didn't make him too popular with everyone.
He definitely ruffled some feathers, but through that process, he'd expose flaws in people's thinking.
Forcing them to confront their own ignorance, basically.
Yeah, and strive for a deeper understanding of themselves and the world.
So challenging the status quo, I bet that made him some enemies.
You're right, he was a controversial figure, and that ultimately led to his trial and execution in 399 BC.
Wow, he literally died for his commitment to philosophy. That's both tragic and incredibly inspiring. But if he didn't write anything down, how do we even know about his ideas?
That's where his most famous student, Plato, comes in.
Ah, Plato.
He wrote a ton about Socrates, preserving those dialogues and teachings for us. And through Plato, Socrates' influence continued to shape Western philosophy.
So a direct line from the Milesians and Pythagoreans to Socrates, then on to Plato. It's like a chain reaction of ideas.
It really shows how interconnected these thinkers were, each generation building on the last. And what's amazing is that their ideas are still relevant today.
It really makes you realize that the pursuit of knowledge and wisdom is timeless. It connects us to those who came before and those who will come after. So as we wrap up this first deep dive, what are the big takeaways?
Well, we have the Milesians breaking away from tradition, seeking that rational understanding of the universe.
Oh yeah, a real turning point.
Then the Pythagoreans and their fascination with numbers, that idea of a universe governed by mathematical harmony.
Okay.
And finally, Socrates, with his emphasis on self-examination, critical thinking, and the pursuit of a virtuous life.
Wow. It's like they've given us this incredible toolbox for understanding ourselves and the world.
They really have, and that's what makes exploring philosophy so exciting. It's not just about facts, it's about developing those skills for thinking, questioning, living a more meaningful life.
Absolutely. So as we continue this journey, we've got to keep those minds curious, keep those questions coming, keep those critical thinking skills sharp.
That's the key. There's a whole world of incredible ideas out there waiting to be discovered.
And we'll be here diving into them with you every step of the way. Until next time.